Hey guys, I want to talk about Bitcoin and what's going wrong with Bitcoin today. So what's wrong with Bitcoin today? How's it gone terribly wrong? Terribly. And rather disappointing as well. So I remember I've been in banking for the last 20 years. The CEO of Oruka. Oruka has a payment ring that allows users tap to pay with a ring. So while I look very nice, cute, and fashionable with these things, everything here is functional. So this ring you can tap to pay. It's a custom ring actually. It has no battery. And then effectively you can just again use this as a bank. This can be your bank effectively. You don't need a battery with this thing, so you can go swimming on this as well. Go swimming, go for a run, go for a night out, go traveling with this. And then you just tap to pay anywhere there's contactless. So contactless works in MasterCard, we're quoting 210 countries. Visa, we're quoting 205 countries. So any machine that can tap to pay across the world, you can use our rings with. Okay, so we have a lot of customers, about 55 countries, and we allow users also, we can combine with Binance. We're talking to Stripe. So you can also top these things up with Binance. If you're on Binance, you can top it up and tap to pay. That means you're now spending crypto. So we do both sides, right? So I'm going to be fair here, right? So I'm not one of those finance guys that have worked in finance all my life and I go, wait a minute, I hate Bitcoin, because I realize the utility behind it, okay? And I'm fair enough. And I wouldn't knock it without knowing what it's about and why. On the other hand, as well, you can also use this as well if you're a business owner. Sorry, so if you're a business owner, you can tap this to receive money. Okay, so imagine going around instead of having your POS terminal, and what you can do is you can just have, instead of your card, you just have this bracelet or ring. So you can just tap this on the customer's phone, you receive money straight to your bank. So it's really cool, applied fashion to payments. But I say all that to talk about just what went wrong with Bitcoin. Okay, I remember again, I repeat, 2019, 2020, when Bitcoin came out, developers used to come into the calls or meeting rooms, I remember, with laptops where they were mining Bitcoins. So developers here would know this as well. And this was not far along, 2019, 2020, right? So it wasn't far at all. And you could go in 29, sorry, apologies, 2012, 2030, you could go in and actually mine a Bitcoin. That's how small it was. In fact, I used to laugh at people who would go in and just have a Bitcoin farm just to mine 0.001 Bitcoin back then. So it looked like the future. Then it's just gone really, really wrong. Dead. People are trying to figure out what exactly it does, where it sits. So I want to talk about where things went wrong with Bitcoin. And I'm not spreading FUD, right? They call it FUD, fear and uncertainty. I'm not spreading that. Neither am I. I'm just being realistic on what we currently have and where we should be going. Especially, I say we because I support Bitcoin. I support traditional finance. We support both. In this case, we only support our customers. So if our customers want Bitcoin, they get Bitcoin. They want traditional finance to top up with their bank, they top up with their bank. So we're in between here, right? So I'm not picking any side. My fellow bankers, like I remember the CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, the first thing all these guys said were, oh my goodness, Bitcoin is for criminals. Bitcoin, if anybody uses Bitcoin in my company, we're going to fire them. Now they've changed, okay? So that's important that, listen, we don't judge, okay? And as long as you want it, okay, and you pay for it, it's yours. You decide, it's your money. Okay, and that's what we look at. But let's talk about Bitcoin. So first things first, people always argue and say, hey, Bitcoin is so valuable that we shouldn't spend it. So I want to talk about that. I'll address that as well, but I'll just give five, okay, just to keep it. There's a lot, but I'll just give five issues of what went wrong with Bitcoin adoption, Bitcoin use. Number one is where people try to read Bitcoin charts and say that it's a hedge against inflation, it's a hedge against the government. What people miss, they win the other today. What people miss is that, again, I remember then, I think as of 2022, 2021, 2022, inflation across the world was really high. And by that, I don't mean developing countries, because that's always high anyway. There's a way they can balance out the production and the output there. But across Europe, USA, it came up to 9-10%, which was really, really high. 10%. Imagine that. Imagine if you didn't get a pay rise at work over 10%, you were losing 9% of your salary. So that's how crazy it was. It was really, really bad. But the downside is that Bitcoin then dropped to 40% or 50% that year, 2022. Go check it out. So if you were reading the charts, if you're an investor, you look at it and go, wait a minute, there's inflation everywhere, so my money is not safe there. But you can't go to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is dropping as well. If it's an hedge, if it should be a hedge against inflation, Bitcoin should be going up while money is going down. But that's not the case. The same thing as well with the war, right? So there's a war going on right now. Again, this is, if you're already watching this is in, April 2026. So war going on. So what did you expect? If there's war going on and it's a hedge, a bit like what gold does, you'd expect Bitcoin, which is digital gold, you'd expect that to go up in value. It's going down. Why? So here's the point, and that's it. Bitcoin is actually a risky asset, less about digital gold, because people argue that it's gold. It's not gold because clearly it's gold, right? In the sense that it's valuable, okay? It's limited, okay? But in terms of the behavior, the performance, and the correlation, how it behaves with the market and expected readings and analytics, it's wrong, okay? So clearly it's not, yeah? So that's one thing which has gone against Bitcoin. I don't want to give any advice here on what you should do, what you should do as an investor. And all I know is that it's not what it claims to be, right? It's not a hedge against inflation. Yeah. Second point is I think the energy. So people argue about the amount of energy it takes, right? And that's where they compare it again to gold, right? So it takes a lot of energy to produce Bitcoin because of power. That's why I can't run a Bitcoin farm here, because it's going to pull so much energy. It's going to cost me more to mine the Bitcoin. It costs a lot of computation power to put these things together than what it's worth. That's why you don't see a rich person going ahead and just doing Bitcoin, right? Because it's not worth it. That's true. So they're saying, oh, now there's an argument that it can be more efficient with the hydropower. It can be more efficient. If that's the case, there are a lot more people. And I know a lot of investors. I know, in fact, one specifically that is now a top AI firm that used to mine Bitcoin. So a lot of these Bitcoin guys are just moving straight into AI, which is traditional finance, AI, tech, but it's more traditional than Bitcoin. Why? Because there's more money there. Why? Because it's not as efficient as people think. Okay, so that's one. Secondly, which is different, and this I think is where we come in. Okay, so we're already doing our part there. It'll be interesting to see what others do, and that's the point that people say, "Hey, Bitcoin is going to replace the entire financial system." It is replacing the entire financial system. I beg to differ. Bitcoin is not, because again we have both. I have a Bitcoin ring. This ring was for Bitcoin. So I have a Bitcoin ring. Oh, and I have a traditional finance ring, which is a MasterCard ring. So which one do you think processes the most transactions? Yeah. So even with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin as is now at the moment can barely touch 400 transactions, 400,000 transactions globally per day. To the whole world, they're barely up to 400, 500,000 transactions per day on Bitcoin. Think about that for a minute. Now compare that to traditional finance. Traditional finance, you're talking about 150 million just on Visa, not MasterCard, just Visa. MasterCard add on top per day. So 150 million transactions plus over that per day. That's a quiet day, by the way, 150 million. Compare that to 300,000 per day on Bitcoin. So the adoption is just not there. There's a massive scale, massive hope, but mismatch on what's happening. And who do you have to blame for that? So we are doing our part. We're a small company, okay? So if you check out Ruka, it's about 20, 25 of us. And then we work with banks, which makes us bigger. But in truth, we're still a small firm. And compare that to the big guys who should be doing Bitcoin. People like, there's a guy, I think it's Peter, whoever his name is. Peter, he does Bitcoin. And he buys the Bitcoin and holds on to it. And that goes against what you're preaching. That goes against what you're doing. Because if you want to buy and hold it as digital gold, that means you want it to die. Compare that to traditional finance, where there's a lot of transactions happening. It becomes more valuable. Yeah, that's a problem. So to me, I think Bitcoiners, and this is the only advice I'll give, Bitcoiners should spend Bitcoin more. Okay, and that's the truth. They should accept Bitcoin more. They should open up Bitcoin more. They should accept crypto more. If you accept crypto as payment, crypto becomes more valuable. Okay. On the other side, I always have these arguments, sporadic arguments with Bitcoiners and crypto guys, sporadically. On the other side, you don't want governments to go into Bitcoin. So people argue and say, hey, the China government, they should accept Bitcoin. Japan the other day accepted Bitcoin as an asset, and they were really happy. People were celebrating. I saw it on the Bitcoin page as well, by the way. And I thought it was one of the most silly, but the most downright defeatist thing you could do. Because the entire point of Bitcoin and crypto is to replace the financial system. You're celebrating that the finance guys are going in there and recognizing it. When they recognize something, that means they own it, right? If I was going to go into, I'm thinking of a new market we went into. We went to Kenya the other day. So we have our rings in Kenya. We went to Kenya. For you to go into Kenya, you need to understand the fintech. You need to submit all your transactions flow. You need to submit all the KYC, how you check every customer. You need to make sure they know everything about your business before you get into Kenya. That's Kenya, by the way. Other countries are worse, right? Now, here's the point. For you to do that, you're giving so much information out. So what do you think is happening when Japan accepts Bitcoin? I tell you what's happening. They understand Bitcoin because they now own Bitcoin. They've gone to buy Bitcoin. So why you think it's gone up in value? Because it's recognized. It's lost the very thing it was supposed to be, which is to replace the financial system. I can have a whole video on this one, okay? In fact, maybe I should have a whole video. If you guys want me to have a video on this point, I'll talk about it. But the adoption, okay, and how Bitcoin should be recognized is too far apart. And that's why it's failing. It's failing because of this point. Specifically, there are other points, but specifically because of this point, because of the adoption, because of the way the Bitcoiners themselves are not using the money and are begging that people use it. I call it money because it was invented as money. It's P2P. If people start recognizing this chicken as a form of money, it becomes money because that means there's someone that's going to accept this chicken as money for my services. Money is payment for services or time. Time being a service, right? If I say, hey, come sit here, I have to pay you just for sitting here. People in the office, you have to pay them being in the office. That's the same thing as well. So in this case, there's always a payment going through. So that's the same thing. If we decide that it's going to be Bitcoin, someone on the other side accepts Bitcoin as payment for a service, it's become money. You can worry about how you do your taxes separately, the same way as Rolex can be payments. You can pay with your Rolex and do worry about doing your taxes separately. So that's one thing. The other point, which I think Bitcoiners fight a lot about, right, is the whole point around scarcity, which is interesting. Tell why it's interesting because, again, so we have our own, I said about range, right? And they're scarce in that sense because there's a limited amount we can produce. So why a lot of people came over, I think there was a bank that wanted to work with us. Then we had to say, hey, for us to work together, we need 6 months time frame. So that means, the bank is big and they have millions of customers. So I said, hey, if you need millions of customers, you need to order it in advance because we have a small team. The small team have to check every requirement, every spec, every security that comes through. And we're not just a payment ring. So there are a few people that do payment rings. That's okay. You can search online, you can join them. But for us, we do payment rings, we do competition with each other. So each ring competes with each other. So you have the payment ring, the fitness ring, the bracelets, all competing within an ecosystem. So it's not just, tap to pay, right? And that's not what we're doing here. We're a whole community. So when banks say, hey, we want to work with us, please give our rings to customers or give bracelets to small businesses, we have to make sure it's done properly. Because it's cars doesn't mean it's that much more valuable than other payment rings. Does that make sense? So that's the same thing with Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin claims that there's 21 million in supply, okay, Ethereum is not limited to 21 million, but more people are buying Ethereum. More people are using Ethereum. Bitcoin, I know, is not being used. And it feels like an old, unused, toy in the shelf that's not being, just saved. Hopefully goes up in future. Yeah, so that's one thing. So I think the summary with that one is a quick one to say, hey, the fact that it's 21 million doesn't mean it's valid. Okay, there's 21 million. Okay, there's very few amount of gold in the world. Okay, but not if that was the case, everybody in the world should have gold. But people just don't believe in gold. They're just like, nope, I don't want gold. What am I going to do with it? I can't travel across the state with gold. So people don't like gold for that, right? So there are reasons, there are preferences from an investor point of view that doesn't really equate to saying, hey, because it's scarce, we should get it. In that case, we should all have artwork. You should buy this giraffe that I got from, I think we got that from a safari location. You should buy that straight away. Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. Again, and last point then is the whole institution point, which I've said already. So institution is, we don't know. A government goes ahead and validates Bitcoin tomorrow doesn't mean it's valuable, right? Because that means they're now controlling it. That means they have a significant percentage. And so that's all for now. I'll stop there for now. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Oda Ruka. Orukka. All the best.